Flamerule 12, 1488 DR. Last night, Stacy and I chatted for a bit. It looks like she's got a taste for spirits, and that Maud better not find out. She's a chatty girl. Poor girl lost her boyfriend, sadly. But despite the circumstances, she's carrying on, which is pretty good. I found out that Zix had been planning to hunt down that serial murderer here in Ten Towns before even talking to Speaker Nerth at Vark's funeral. You see, while Zix drunk himself into a stupor hanging out with Charles and the Fisher Dwarves, an old bounty hunter from Easthaven named Miss Trollbane told Marvolor and I about her discussion with him, and asked that we please track this killer down. She told us that our beloved traveling supply stand, Torgs, was the only common thread in these murders, that the murders all took place when Torgs was in town. Easthaven on the 5th, Bryn Shanders on the 7th, and Targos on the 9th, and subsequently, I've followed to perform the funeral rites. Whenever we catch up to Torgs, we'll have to see who of their four-man operation is most or least likely to be a suspect. With Torga's success in her traveling shop model, I don't want to rule out the possibility that someone out there is trying to set her up to be responsible for the murders. Maybe someone is following Torgs from town to town just waiting. We'll see. Miss Trollbane would like to have us send her a trinket from the killer in Easthaven when all of this is done. She says she's got some sway in Easthaven too, so we might be in the business of collecting favors here. Though maybe I should just sit this one out. Zix seems pretty set on handling this one. And last night, Grimm made a toast to his deceased brother, and it looked like Charles talked a bit with him about his mead and his quest for pollen, though I couldn't hear most of it from where I was. We all decided to turn in for the night. The Goliath bouncer gentleman at Six Flags threw passed-out Zix into a cellar room or something for the night so he wasn't out in the cold. In the meantime, I was sent on an errand to check on Peter, Paul, and Mark, 3 Targos Fisher Dwarves up in Bremen. And of course we were going to be paid to investigate sightings of a lake monster there. So in the morning, we all got up and ready to go to Bremen at sunrise. Charles divined a prediction of the weather with some kind of magic I don't completely understand. He conjured a snowflake in his hand and said it was going to snow. Marvolor and Charles rode by dog sled, and I rode Squawkmore, carrying a hungover Zix on my floating disc ritual. We tied Squawkmore's saddle harness to the sled in case we experienced a whiteout and risked losing track of each other, and I sent Seymour ahead of us carrying a magically lit cup to light the way ahead just a bit. Sure enough, Charles was right about the weather. How curious. We navigated through it all though, and came to the frozen ice over the river just before Bremen. On the bank of the other side, we saw a mauled body of a gnome who we came to find out was called Neezer. Poor guy lost his kids to the cold and his wife to suicide. But anyway, upon inspection of his corpse, we were ambushed by a fluffy Crag-Cat with some fresh crimson around its lips. Unfortunately for it, it didn't realize that our numbers wouldn't see it another successful hunt. We felled it pretty quickly, and Charles skinned its hide, with some weird icy organ thing attached. We carried the gnome back to town to be identified, which a guardsman could, telling us all about his life and such. Apparently this Neezer had been developing these advanced fishing contraptions, but the supposed lake monster got in the way of it all. He wrote as such in a note found on him, which we should probably save for Tali. He implied it was a 6-legged creature. He also had a receipt from when Torgs came to town just a few days ago, the 9th, with a signet from Dugan's Hole, where Torgs is based out of. The guardsmen seemed relieved that we'd taken out the Crag-Cat that got Neezer though. Apparently they'd been having a Crag-Cat problem lately. After showing the guardsman Neezer's note, he says that the speaker Shalescar has been claiming the same, that the speaker is being afflicted by some kind of psychosis, that he disappears to go down to the water's edge and claims to see a brown bear dive into the water and come out a lake monster. I've taken the guardsman's statement that the people in this town are suffering from a kind of psychosis. That's one point against there being a lake monster out here. Anyway, we're holding up in Neezer's old place for the night, since it and every other building in this town is empty now. It's kind of a sad place that you can tell used to have a good bit of life in it for a small town. I'm going to go speak to the Fisher Dwarves I've been sent to check up on, and send off Neezer's body. Maybe we'll play some games of chance to pass the time until we get a good chance to meet up with the speaker or other folk here in Bremen at the Buried Treasures Inn and Supply, or the Five Brothers Tavern Center. I'll write more later. Perrin.